Howdy, and welcome to episode 28 of T-Shirts and Shawls. I'm Karen, and today is Thursday, May 18th, 2017. And from the title of the episode, Almost a Year, basically it is almost a year since I started the podcast. The first episode went out on May 26th of 2016. So next week on Friday will be the 1 year anniversary, podiversary of this podcast. So since I don't have, my current schedule isn't set up, so I will be recording next week since I'm doing every other week, I decided to kind of talk a little bit about the podiversary in this episode, and I actually have a big giveaway that I've planned. So I will talk about that a little bit later in this episode to let you know how to enter and what kinds of prizes you might win. So keep watching for that. But gosh, can't believe it's been almost a year since I started this thing. It's really exciting. I'm happy with myself for, keeping consistent with it and keeping going with it. I am super thrilled that you guys have been watching it, whether you have watched from the beginning or you are a newer viewer. Perhaps this is your first episode. If so, welcome. Really, really exciting, and I hope this continues on for more years to come. That's the plan, so I guess hopefully you will continue enjoying to watch this, and we'll go ahead and get started with today's episode. Today's t-shirt is one of those crossover shirts, and so the actual characters on this shirt are from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And this is a newer shirt, and I just got it a couple of weeks ago, and I was really excited to see it because I actually do not have any other Buffy t-shirts. And just speaking of, time passing, this year was the 20th anniversary of when Buffy the Vampire Slayer started. 20 years ago, the first episode came out, so all these things just keep making me feel really old. But anyway, Buffy is probably my favorite TV show ever. There are, a few shows that are in the top list, but probably Buffy would be the very top show if I really sat down and made a list. So I almost started Buffy from the very beginning. The first season I did pick up a few episodes. I was in college at the time. I did pick up a few episodes in the first season, enough to kind of pique my interest. I do remember the really terribly campy movie, and so I was a little hesitant at first with the TV show, but the TV show was nothing like the terrible movie. A much, much better show, and I know that I missed a few episodes in the first season that I actually didn't see until I got the DVDs. But from the second season on, I faithfully watched every episode when it came out. And even though there were definitely some ups and downs along the way, overall it was a really, really great show. And it's probably about time for me to rewatch some of it, especially some of my more favorite episodes. So I may have to kind of do that this summer, especially since kind of some of the TV shows that we've been watching, go on hiatus for the summer. It'd be a good time to maybe pick up something like Buffy to rewatch. So I was really happy to get this shirt, but I also really like this shirt. So the crossover part, the pose that the characters are in is the same pose for The Breakfast Club. So if you're familiar with that movie. And I am very much a child of the 80s. I grew up in the 80s. However, at the end of the 80s, I was 14. So my high school years were in the early 90s. And as a result, I think I missed a lot of the 80s movies, the kind of quintessential, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, 16 Candles, those types of movies. I actually missed them when I was myself in high school. I guess I was just young enough that when they came out, I didn't watch them. So it actually wasn't until I was in college, mostly my freshman year in college, before I picked up a lot of those movies. So I remember the group of friends that I had my freshman year, we spent a lot of time watching those 80s movies. And I think that my favorite movie is The Princess Bride, which technically is a movie made in the 80s. But my favorite of the kind of 80s movies, like The Breakfast Club, that kind of genre, would be Say Anything, which is a really good one with John Cusack. But anyway, I really do like The Breakfast Club as well. So I really like the shirt, the crossover between Buffy and The Breakfast Club. The shawl that I'm wearing today is actually one that I did not knit for myself. This is one that my friend Emily knit for me way back in 2009. I've mentioned Emily in earlier episodes on the podcast. There was another shawl that I showed you guys that she made for me. That was in episode 2 or 3. It's been almost a year. I don't remember exactly. Anyway, so this is the Mara shawl. It is a pretty simple shawl. It is garter stitch body, and then it has a ruffled edge. And this is a shawl that the designer is just listed as Madeline Tosh, so I don't know if it's actually Amy of Madeline Tosh who designed it. I'm not really sure. But anyway, so it's a fairly straightforward shawl, but the ruffle, because of the way ruffles work, it takes quite a while and quite a bit of yarn. It is knit out of Mad Tosh yarn, Mad Tosh, Tosh DK, which used to be labeled as Tosh Worsted. In fact, I think when this was made, it was still labeled as Tosh Worsted. But anyway, so this is the Malachite colorway, gorgeous, gorgeous green. And the reason that Emily knit this for me is because I had knit a Mara, and I knit it out of a really bright yellow yarn. And if I'm able to find a good picture, I will try to add a picture in right here. But I made it out of a really bright yarn for my mother-in-law, because she is someone who can get away with wearing yellow, and she looks really fabulous in yellow. So I wanted her to have a nice bright yellow shawl. If I remember right, I knit the Mara for my mother-in-law first, and I wanted one for myself, but I didn't want to knit it again because ruffle, like I said, really takes a lot of time. And so if I remember right, I think that's why Emily decided to make this for me. I could have my timing details wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Anyway, so really simple shawl, but the yarn makes it look really nice, and it's a good weight shawl. It's not really light, so it's not necessarily something to wear a lot here in Texas, but it is kind of a nice shawl. By the way, I really do not like the colors green and purple together. They look okay, but I'm not a huge fan. But anyway, I'm doing green and purple today. The reason that I wanted to talk about this shawl is really to think about the yellow one that I knit for my mother-in-law, because my mother-in-law's birthday is coming up in August, and she is someone who is very knit-worthy, which, by the way, I'm pretty sure she does not watch the podcast, but just in case, Marcia, if you are watching this episode, go ahead and skip the rest of this section, because I don't want to give away anything that I'm thinking about for your birthday gift. Anyway, so she is very, very knit-worthy. She herself is a quilter, so she understands the value behind handmade items, and she also is not one of those people that receives a handmade gift and puts it up in the closet or in a drawer. She uses things, and that is a really, really wonderful compliment. So I used to knit a lot for her, and lately I haven't knit quite as much for her. And I feel like I really need to get back into that because, like I said, I'm sorry about that. Apparently they got a phone call right in the middle of recording this segment, and it just breaks in and stops my recording. Anyway, so my mother-in-law, very, very knit-worthy. I made her something, I think for Christmas, and she was really, really excited to get it, and I realized that I need to knit more for her. So her birthday's in August, so I need to go ahead and get started so I can make sure to have it done in time for her birthday. So in thinking about what I want to make her, I decided that there's a skein of hand spun that I actually spun quite a while back, but I've spun it with her in mind because it is a yellowish color. It is not a super bright yellow like the shawl that I made her, but it's kind of this, I guess, golden straw color, so a straw yellow. So I think it won't be, you know, it won't be the same as the bright yellow, but it'll still be something that is in her color family that works well with her, and so it's something that I would like to make for her. So I forgot to look up the details of how much yardage I have, but this is I think it was like 6.5 ounces of fiber. So I've got, I mean, you can tell just from the skein, I've got some pretty good yardage going here. So I need to kind of flip through some shawl patterns and try to figure out what exactly I want to make her, and go ahead and wind this and cast on and get that project started. So this is overall it's a fingering weight yarn, maybe kind of a lighter end of fingering. Some places maybe a little heavier. Anyway, so if you have a potential suggestion for a shawl that might look really great out of this hand spun, I would love to hear it. I'm gonna decide probably in the next week or two, so if you have a suggestion, make sure you kind of get it to me quickly, and hopefully I will be able to show you guys what I pick out pretty soon. But that's why I wanted to talk about Mara. So a gift for me, because I made a gift for my mother-in-law, because now I'm thinking of another gift to make for my mother-in-law. I have a finished object that is not a shawl. Usually I've been, when I finish a shawl, putting that in the shawl section, but I have a finished object, not a shawl. I have a pair of socks. So 2 socks. It's been a while since I've knit an actual pair of socks because I've mostly been doing sample socks, and that means I only have to knit one. So it was nice to knit the pair. I showed you guys this one, the first one already, and if you remember right, I did the heel flap and gusset, which is my personal favorite because it fits me the best, but on self-striping it can sometimes create things like this little stripe right here with the heel, and I don't hate it. Like, I don't hate it enough to undo this and redo it to fix that stripe, but I would prefer not to have that happen. So on the second sock, what I did is, notice no little bitty stripe there. In fact, notice that the stripe pattern doesn't get messed up at all. It stays in the order of the stripes. So what I did is I went ahead and knit my heel flap and gusset, and when it came time to pick up the stitches, so right here, I was still in the red, and the color that comes after the red is this gray color. And I decided that I wanted to not have that little stripe and not have the gray, because this gray had just been done, so it would have come right up against this and made a really thick stripe. I decided to break my yarn and to start at the dark. It's almost a black. I don't think it's quite black. Maybe it is. So we'll call it black. Start with the black, so that way I would start up here with the black, so that way I would keep my color progression and I wouldn't end up with that little stripe. And it did mean that I had a little bit of yarn waste because I had to bypass the end of the red and the kind of brownish gray color. And so there's a little bit of yarn waste, and then I had 2 extra ends to weave in. But overall, I think it was completely worth it because I really like how the second sock turned out and how I did not have this little blip right here. So very happy with that technique. I don't know how well it'll work if there is, like, I have some mustache yarn that has 16 stripes. So when I do something like that, I probably will need to do like an afterthought heel. I posted this on Instagram, and someone said what she does the same thing with the starting the yarn at a different place to when you pick up the gusset stitches. But what she does is she knits from the other end of the yarn ball or the yarn cake, which sounds like a neat idea for the heel. I think she said she does that for the heel. That way, and then doesn't cut the main yarn. So that way she can just go straight back to the next color. And so that might be something to do potentially for something that has a huge number of stripes that might make me and I have to waste a lot of yarn to get to the next color in the progression. So I think I'm going to kind of play around with that idea of doing the heel in either the other end of the yarn or something like that. Obviously, I know I could do like a coordinating color with some mini skeins, so playing with some other options for not ending up with that little stripe thing. But anyway, pair of socks finished, going in the sock drawer just in time for, Texas summer. But anyway, it'll be nice to have them when the weather does turn cold-ish again. And that's what I finished. A quick what I'm designing update on the book. Basically, the content is all completely done, and I have sent that to the graphic designer, and she's going to start working on layout next week. The photographs have been taken. I am still waiting to get the photographs from the photographer. He is still doing some editing. We took the photos in studio, and then he's doing a composite to do the backgrounds. So it takes a little bit longer for editing, but hopefully I will get those soon, and the graphic designer will have those to also put in the book. I did see a quick kind of preview of the cover image, and it looks really, really fun. So I'm excited to see the rest of the images and then to see what the graphic designer does with the layout. So still moving forward. Don't have a definite release date yet, but tentatively I think summer is still going to happen. Probably late June, early July is when I'd like to aim for. But we'll kind of see what happens. It also takes time for the printer to print copies. We upload it to the printer. We get a proof copy so we can make sure all the colors printed okay and everything looks right. And then you have to order it, and it takes several weeks. So probably what I'll do is when we order the print copy, the proof from the printer, I will start taking pre-orders, and then I will place the order with the printer, and the pre-orders will be delivered as soon as I get those from the printer. But again, don't have any specific hard dates yet, but definitely moving forward, so I wanted to give you a little bit of an update. For what I'm dyeing, I am preparing for Houston Fiber Fest. So I have lots of yarn that is getting dyed and ready to be taken there at the end of June. So if you are in the Houston area or want to travel to the Houston area at the end of June, I would love to see you at Houston Fiber Fest. I am mostly working on self-striping because that is the stuff that I have the least stock on, because it sells pretty quickly. So that's what I'm mostly working on. And as I am dyeing it, if any of it has been out of stock, I'm putting it back in the online shop. So if you cannot go to Houston Fiber Fest, but you've been waiting for especially self-striping that has been out of stock, if it has not already been put back in stock, it will be very shortly. I think the only out of stock ones I have right now are Deeds of Arms, which is a 4-color kind of fallish colors, and Eric and Enid, which is a pink and green 2-stripe. I believe those are the only 2 that are out of stock. And I actually have those dyed. I just need to reskein them and get them back in stock. So if you're looking for those, they will be there soon. Everything else has at least one skein in the shop right now. And what I am doing as far as knitting, I have a sample sock of an old colorway that had never gotten a sample. So I have started that. This is Great Cheer, which is an aqua and a reddish orange. So this is a color combination that's really not something that would be my initial go-to. I was when I developed this colorway, I wanted to do something that had highly contrasting colors. So in the blue and the orange family, those are our contrasting colors, and so that's what I came up with. And this was, I think it was the third colorway that I did. Once in Future was my very first, so that was the blue and gray. Eric and Enid, the red or the pink and green, it was my second, and I'm pretty sure this one was my third. If not third, it was the fourth. And even though it's been around for a while, I had never knit up a sample. So I'm finally knitting a sample of that. And if you like Great Cheer, if you like this colorway, I do have it available in the shop right now. So that is what I'm knitting. I'm going to be starting another sample sock really soon with the exclusive colorway for Houston Fiber Fest. The colorway was inspired by the fabric that Diana of Diana Couture, she does really wonderful bags, so bags for knitting projects. She is the vendor who was chosen to have the use of the Houston Fiber Fest logo. So Lester, the little sheep with a little cute little hat. So she was able to create a fabric that has Lester and the Houston Fiber Fest logo on it, and she will be making bags and selling those at Houston Fiber Fest. And so she sent me, and so she contacted me and asked if I would be interested in doing some type of yarn that coordinates with the bag. Our booths are right next to each other at Houston Fiber Fest. So I said, absolutely yes, I'd be delighted to do that. So she sent me a sample of the fabric so I could really see the colors, and I picked out 4 colors from the fabric that I thought would really go well together in the yarn. And I'm not showing you the fabric yet because I forgot to ask Diana if it's okay if I show the fabric. But I will ask her, and if she says it's okay, I will put a picture in my newsletter that's going out on Tuesday. So she will have the fabric and the bags made up, and then I will have this yarn. And this is I don't have a sample started, so this is in the skein, so you might not be able to see all the colors completely, but this might give you a little bit of an idea. So this is going to be a nice bright colorway. So there is a kind of dark bluish purple, a brighter kind of turquoise. Obviously there's the yellow, you can certainly see that, and then a pinkish colorway. So that will be the 4-stripe colorway that is the Houston Fiber Fest exclusive, and the name of the colorway comes from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And I'm going to tease you and not tell you the name of the colorway yet. If you want to know the name of the colorway, subscribe to my newsletter, which goes, and then the one going out on Tuesday, I will share the name in that. But that is what I've been working on dyeing lately. So what I've been knitting, first I just realized that I totally forgot to say which yarn these socks are made out of. So quick little bit there, tumbleweed yarn. So this is the Dark Water Sunset colorway. So I definitely want you guys, because this is a really great color. The yarn is really nice as well. So if you like it, that way you know where to find it. So tumbleweed yarn, and I will of course link it in my show notes, but it definitely needs to be mentioned. So that is the socks that I finished. So other stuff that I'm currently working on, I showed you guys my Rice Fields, the Brioche, 2-color Brioche shawl that I started. This is what I'm doing for our Q2 knit along for the podcast. So the theme is any shawl that uses 2 or more colors of yarn. So this is my entry for that, and I have made some good progress. So this is one side, and this side you can see the pink color is the dominant color, and then the other side, the gray color there is the dominant. And really every section of the brioche switches, but because these sections down here are a little smaller and this one is bigger, it makes it seem like that is more dominant. But now I'm in the next section, so you can see here now on this side the pink is coming out, and this section will be just as big, if not bigger, than this one. So so it'll really bring out that alternating colors. So again, on this side you can see mostly pink down here, but the gray will start to become a lot more apparent as I continue it. The pattern actually has it written out, so you could make this a really, really ginormous shawl, but obviously I don't have enough yarn to make super ginormous. So the designer said, and I do still have a fair amount of yarn, so that's what I have left of my two colors. But now that I've got more stitches on the needles, the yarn is going to go by a lot more quickly. So I'm not sure how much more I will be able to really get done. The designer said most of the testers finished within this section, about 2/3 of this section, which right now I can't remember how many rows. I think you're supposed to repeat the 4-row repeat 29 times. So 29 times 4. If I'm remembering that right, that's how many rows, and about 2/3 of that is where most testers finished. So we'll see how much I get done. It looks like you bind off pretty quickly. There is no border at the end to do. You just bind off at the end of a section. So I don't have to worry about saving enough yarn for a bind off. Or for a border. Definitely have to save enough for the bind off. But basically my plan is just to knit until I run out of yarn. So I brought this project to Knit Night on Monday, and I'm really getting into the rhythm of the brioche. It is something that now I'm not having to look back at the pattern. I'm able to kind of really remember the 4-row repeat. And so I thought that meant it was safe to bring to Knit Night. Yeah, not so much. So apparently I got to talking in my conversations, and there were a few times where I kind of stopped and put it down, or I didn't put it down, but I definitely stopped and talked and chatted for a while and then picked it back up. And I must have done that at one point and forgotten exactly which row I was on, and in the middle of the row I started doing the wrong thing. And I finished that row and I started the next one, because you knit, so my pink is my main color, so you knit a row with the pink and then you go back and knit with the gray, and then you knit a row with the pink and you go back and knit with the gray, and that's the 4-row repeat. And so I finished with the pink and I started the gray, and when I got to the end of the gray section I realized that my yarn was not in the right place. After one section, the gray yarn ends up in the back of the work, and at the other section it ends up in the front of the work. And I realized the gray yarn was not in the right place. And I thought, oh no, what has happened? And I looked, and you can see how the stitches line up. These are basically slip stitches, so they create nice little rows. And I could tell at the top of my needles that I was not having these rows line up. I had gotten off somewhere. So I got to learn how to tink back on brioche, which once I kind of figured out where the stitches were and how things were going, I was able to get it without too much of an issue. I tinked back to where it looked like I was okay, and so then so it was about halfway through the row, and then I went back into the end. And then I looked at it and I realized, no, there's still something wrong. It's not working out. So I tinked back again, and I decided to go even though it looked like the other half of the row was correct, I decided to go all the way back and then look to see what I had. And sure enough, when I did that, I noticed that half of the row, or half of the shawl, was still off. So it was the previous row where I had messed up and gotten off. So I had to tink half of that back, and then I was able to move forward and to fix that mistake and to get it back on track. But that was actually in this section, the earlier section, because it was before I did the increases. I think it was before I did the increases. So that was definitely an experience, and it actually made me think. I actually planned already to do a tutorial video on how to tink back. So basically, knit backwards stitch by stitch to fix a mistake. I had already decided to do a tutorial video on how to do that, and so it just kind of reaffirmed that I should do the tutorial video. Although I did not add how to tink back on brioche in the tutorial. I just have how to tink back a knit stitch, a purl stitch, a knit two together, and a slip slip knit. So if you're interested in that, I will be posting that tutorial video to my other YouTube channel, the one where I do the tutorials, and I will also be talking about it in my newsletter, which goes out on Tuesday. So another thing for Tuesday's newsletter. The yarn for the brioche shawl is from Yarn Carnival, and I will link to that in the show notes. My other project that I'm knitting, so I've got the socks, I've got the shawl, and now I've got the cowl, which I believe I showed you guys last time as well. This is out of some hand spun, which, if I hold it back here, the colors look great and it's wonderful. But this was hand spun that I did a really horrible job on. I over twisted it. It did not turn out really well. And if you feel this cowl, which my knitting group the previous week, this is what I was working on, and they got to feel it, it does not feel good. Because the yarn is over twisted, it is not soft. Somebody said it actually feels like a washcloth. Oh, isn't that horrible? And so why am I continuing to work on it? Especially because I'm probably never going to wear it. I'm working on it because it is a reminder to myself when I'm spinning to not over twist the yarn. So I want to continue working on this cowl as I kind of teasingly in my knitting group called it the punishment cowl, like I'm punishing myself for over twisting the yarn. But I really think that it will help the lesson sink in a lot more if I work with this yarn and really realize what it means to over twist when you're spinning. So that is why I'm going to continue working on it, even though it's really not very much fun to knit, but the colors are nice. So it looks nice as long as you don't have to look close to see the over twisted or to actually feel it. So that is what I'm working on. I do plan to cast on at least the sample sock for Houston Fiber Fest, that shawl for a gift from my mother-in-law. I have another project as a gift that I want to cast on. So I plan to have a lot more things on the needles coming up pretty soon. So I'm doing a little bit of spinning. Not a lot, but a little bit is more than I had done. So this is the green fiber that I showed you guys a little while back. So this is one full single. This was dyed by Heavenly Fiber. It is a merino silk blend. So I finished the first single and I have the second single on the spinning wheel right now. I am planning to do the two singles and ply them together, so it'll be a 2-ply, and then I will probably make a shawl out of it, something lacy, because 2-ply really works with lacy stitch patterns. And so that is what I am currently spinning. I have this one on my Ash for Joy. So my mini spinner, my Hanson, is empty right now. So I think what I might do is actually start having 2 projects going on since I've got 2 wheels. So I have 2 projects going at the same time. So I just need to go through my fiber stash and figure out what I want to put on that wheel. It helps that I actually, instead of, because my Joy folds up and I can put it in a bag and kind of put it off to the side, because it's technically a travel wheel, but it's been helping to actually, instead of folding it up, to leave it out, so that way it is available for me to sit down and spin, even if I have 5 or 10 minutes, and so that's been helping. And I think I'm going to do the same with the Hanson. I'm going to leave it out on my desk, so that way if I have just 5-10 minutes, I can get a little bit of spinning done. The other thing I showed you guys from Ply Away is that I took that class on spinning singles and using color in singles, and I showed you the little skein of what I had spun in the class. So this is that little skein wound into a cake, and I've started knitting it so I could actually see how it knits up. And so this whole first part here was when we were practicing actually spinning a singles yarn, because you don't want to add as much twist as you would if you were planning to ply it. So all of that is me practicing to do a singles yarn. I didn't realize there was quite that much of it. I thought that I would go ahead and start knitting with that, and that I would just have like my garter border for my little swatch. But it just kept going and going and going. And last night I knit on it a little bit, and I finally got to the part where I was playing around with singles and color. So finally in that part, I will just continue making this, and it's just going to be this long skinny swatch. It is not becoming anything. I just want to see how the colors turn out, how the single itself knits up. And the reason I decided to do a pretty skinny one is because I switched, in the little practice, I switched techniques pretty frequently. So I wanted to make sure that I gave the little swatch time to build up in, one color, instead of, doing a really wide swatch and having maybe 1 or 2 rows per little technique that I tried. So hopefully I'll be able to get a better idea of how that works by doing a kind of a skinny swatch. So that is all in the what I'm spinning lately. So for what I'm stashing, I have 2 non-yarn things. So the first, I was at Spin Night 2 weeks ago at my local yarn shop. I think it was the same night that I recorded the last podcast episode. So I was kind of taking a little bit of a break and wandering the shop, and I noticed in this glass case that there were these sets of double pointed needles that are made out of copper. So I don't know if you can see, maybe if I put them against the purple. So these are double pointed needles made out of copper. And I noticed that, so it's from Penny Points, so solid copper therapeutic needles. And I didn't see that it actually says handcrafted by Alyssa Kay. I did not see that because it was kind of hard to read in the packaging. So I went and asked the yarn shop owner about the needles, and she said, oh, those are actually done by Alyssa, who was there at Spin Night. So she is someone who actually makes these needles. And she said she doesn't make quite as many anymore. But I think there are a couple of sets still available in the yarn shop, and I think she said she had some more online. I will double check that and put a link in the show notes. But these are called Penny Points. They are copper needles. I just thought that I would give them a little try because I usually use wooden needles. I have tried the Signature double points, and I like the Signature needles when they are circular needles. I did not like the double point Signatures, but I thought I would give these copper ones a try. So you can kind of see these are US 1.5, which is a 2.5 millimeter, which is my go-to for socks. And I do think that my gauge is a little bigger than normally on the wooden needles. And these needles, I don't know if I can... Okay, so as I'm knitting with them, they do make a clanking sound. That was more apparent, especially at the beginning when the needles were really clanking together. And they are a little bit heavier than my wooden needles that I've been using. And I feel like I need to, and I'm a tight knitter, I feel like I need to pull even more tightly when I'm knitting on these. So I think that they are a really neat idea. I really like them. I like the shininess, the color, which means I probably need to make sure that I keep them polished. But I'm not sure that these are going to be needles that I use really frequently because they do seem to not work as well for me as the wooden needles do. But I'm glad that I've given them a try. It's fun to support another local maker. So I'm really happy that I was able to do that, and I will see what I think when I get to the end of the sock. But it's nice to have another set of needles in my go-to size, so that way if I want to do more than one pair of socks at a time, I can do that. And then she also had created this little, I guess, case for the needles. So let me put it on. It has a elastic band at the back, and then just these little leather cases to slip the needles into, so that way it holds your work, so your stitches won't slide off. And that came with the needles. So that was fun to add to my stash, my tool stash. And then the other thing that I got to add to my stash was a set of stitch markers from Ann Tudor. So I hope I have mentioned Ann Tudor before. She makes these really fabulous glass stitch markers. So she does something called lamp work, where she takes glass rods and she melts them and creates shapes. So this is her logo. So she sent a little button. So Ann Tudor, and I will definitely link to her website in the show notes. So she makes super fabulous stitch markers. I have quite a few of them, and she started something called the Collectors Club. So it's kind of like a yarn club, but for stitch markers. And I think it's 3 months. And so we get a special set of stitch markers each month. Last month, which I don't think I showed you guys last month, it was a 3D sheep that was a progress marker, and then 3 colorful sheep of her usual stitch marker type, but in some fun colors. So I really, really liked those. And this time we got 4 stitch markers that are kind of a little, I guess, an exploration of some of her many stitch markers. First off, I'll show you the back side of this, which actually has a little more information, and you can see some pictures of some of her stitch markers. Anyway, so I just got these yesterday. Super excited. So here's the first one. Look at this little guy. Isn't he cute? And then we got a fish. So there's a little goldfish. And then this is a ladybug. And I do actually have a set of her ladybugs in the red and black. But this one is I really like the fun color. So I like that one. And then she recently created a set of hippo stitch markers. So we also got a hippo. And usually what she does is she creates sets that go together. So like with the ladybugs, the one I have, the ladybugs are red and black, but there's one stitch marker that is orange and black, or it might be the other way around. I think it's the orange and black that's the different one. So that way you can have a beginning of round marker that is a little bit different from the others. So with the hippos, if you follow her on Instagram, she was trying to decide what to do for the beginning of round marker for that set. And someone suggested that she do a hippo hiney. So she tried that. And it is, you really need to go check it out. It's really, really cute. And I can't believe I want to put a hippo hiney on a stitch marker on something I use, but it is super cute. And definitely take a look at that. But I got the hippo head as part of the Collectors Club. So 4 new stitch markers. Makes me want to cast on 4 new things. And use these all as mostly knitting in the round, so I can have beginning of round stitch markers and use those new stitch markers. So fun things to add to the stash there. No yarn that I've added, but some other fun things. For what I'm reading and watching, not a whole lot to update here. I did finally finish listening to the biography of Alexander Hamilton. It was 30 plus hours, so it was definitely a long long listen, but I finished it actually last night, and overall I'm glad that I listened to it. I actually learned quite a bit, not just about Alexander Hamilton, but about the founding of the United States. And I mentioned before, I'm not huge on U.S. history, but it definitely, although there were a few parts where I'm like, that I found a little dull, but I think that there are some things that I understand a little better than I did when I took U.S. history in high school and in college. So I definitely learned a lot more about Alexander Hamilton, but also learned a bit more about the founding of our country. So that was good to listen to. Speaking of Hamilton, and so I think I mentioned that the musical Hamilton is coming to Dallas in 2019 and part of the Dallas musicals. And somebody mentioned that if you buy a season pass for next year, then season pass holders basically get to be first in line for season passes for the following year. And apparently the best way to try to guarantee to get tickets to Hamilton is to be a season pass holder for next year for the 2018 musicals, and then you'll be in line to be able to buy season passes for 2019, which is when Hamilton is coming. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I went ahead and bought season passes for me and my husband for next year, for 2018. Probably we will not go see all of the musicals that are coming through for next season, but we'll definitely go see Les Mis. That is one of the ones, and our tickets are it's the end of April, beginning of May. I got May tickets. And then The Lion King will also be one of the ones next year. So I'm pretty sure those are the two that we will definitely go see. We may see some of the others. If not, tickets are transferable. So I will probably be finding people to use those tickets. For next year, I bought the cheapest tickets. So they are up on the very far back balcony. So they're not the best of seats, but I mean, we're still there, and then I will be able to hopefully get the season passes for 2019 so that I can see Hamilton, and I will get better seats hopefully for that. Anyway, so that's kind of what I've been listening to. What I've been reading, I am still reading, and I forget the name of the second book, but the second book in the trilogy, Discovery of Witches. I'm really feeling bogged down in this book. I've talked before about the second book syndrome, and boy does this book have it. At the end of the first book, they made a journey. I'm trying not to give away too much if anyone wants to read it. They made a journey for a very specific reason. Basically, the main character needs training in her magic. So they made this very difficult journey in order to find someone to train her. The second book, I am at the halfway point. Pretty much nothing has happened in the first half of the second book. Finally, now I'm at the 54% mark, I think, 'cause the Kindle can give you a percentage. Finally, she has gotten together with a group of witches who is going to be able to help her figure out her powers and give her some training. But it has taken half the book to get there, and it really... I don't think that a lot of the stuff that has happened so far in this book really needed to happen. It could have been cut down a lot to get to the point where we are now. So I'm hoping that things will pick up a little bit more. I do want to continue reading the book, but it's kind of annoying because I don't really feel compelled to pick it up and read it since I'm not finding it super thrilling. But again, maybe now that they've kind of gotten to the point where there should be some progress forward, maybe it'll pick up some momentum and keep moving forward. We'll see. So that's kind of what I'm reading. What I am watching, a lot of our shows that we're watching are kind of ending their seasons. So we're kind of catching up on those shows. Nothing, I'm trying to think. Again, I don't want to give spoilers. We did just watch this week's episode of Flash, which, I really hoping that something can be done. Just gonna kind of leave it at that because I don't want to do spoilers, and that it doesn't truly end as it did. Let's see. The Big Bang Theory had its season finale, which ended on. It's going to end on a cliffhanger, so we'll see what happens with that when that picks back up. And yeah, pretty much just kind of watching a few things here and there. The kind of cancellations and renewals of various TV shows came up, and we were really disappointed when we saw that Timeless was canceled. Timeless was a show that we picked up. It was a new show, and even though we've been trying not to pick up new shows, we went ahead and started watching it. And although it had a few issues, I really, really liked the show. I really liked the characters. I really liked traveling to different time periods and seeing the characters interact with those historical figures. And that show has gotten it got a bit convoluted for kind of the I guess the bad guys, and the relationship with the main female character, basically her father, and how he plays a role. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, and the show is on the bubble, is it going to be renewed? Is it going to be canceled? And I was really hoping that it would be renewed because I wanted to find out, all these answers to these questions. And so really disappointed when I saw that it was on the list to be canceled. And then I was at knit night on Monday, and I got a text from my husband, and he sent me an article, and apparently there was such a hubbub about the cancellation. People were so disappointed. Apparently there's a Save Our Shows campaign, and Timeless was #1 for shows that people wanted to save. And I guess it actually worked. And the show got renewed. They actually changed their minds and decided instead of canceling it, they would renew it for a 10-episode season. So it's not a full season, but 10 episodes, that gives them plenty of time, especially if they decide not to continue it, to get some of those answers in. So I'm really excited, and it's really fabulous that basically kind of fan outcry and support can help a show go from canceled to renewed. So that's really cool. And I think that's probably about it for what I'm reading and watching. So I thought about, how do I want to celebrate the 1-year anniversary for the podcast? And obviously giveaway came to mind. And I thought, well, what do I want to do as a giveaway? So what I thought I would do is, and we'll kind of see how this works, is give away a lot of yarn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a thread in the podcast group on Ravelry. I will link to it in the show notes. So the thread will be your place to enter for the giveaway. And I'm going to ask you to post one time in the thread. So this is not going to be a chat thread. It's going to be a post one time. Post one time in the thread for your entry, and your post can be either something, one kind of moment from any episode of the podcast that you particularly enjoyed or that you found interesting, and it can be from way back, one of the first episodes, or it can be from this episode. It can be from any of the episodes, or if you would rather, you could post a question that you would like me to answer on a future podcast. So either a memory of something you liked or found interesting in a previous podcast, or a question you would like me to answer on a future podcast. Or you can post all of that in one post, as much or as little to kind of qualify for a post. So you have basically, as soon as this podcast goes live, the contest will start, and it will end on the day before the next podcast films. So the next podcast films on, June 1st, looking at the calendar. Thursday, June 1st is the next episode. So May 31st will be the last day to enter. But it will be good if you enter earlier, because this is how it's going to work. I have picked 13 yarns to give away. Why 13? Well, 12, one for each month that I've been doing the podcast, plus one to grow on. Okay. So 13 yarns that I have to give away, and I'm going to give away one each day. So tomorrow, Friday, May 19th, will be the first day of the giveaway. So I will go to the thread tomorrow. Anyone who has already posted will be entered into the giveaway. I will do a random number generator, and that person will be the first winner. And then the next day, so Saturday, I will do another drawing out of the people who have posted up to that point and do the next giveaway. Here's the thing. You can win as many times as your number gets picked. So if you win, if you are the winner tomorrow, you could still win on Friday or on Saturday. You could still win next week on Friday. So what I'll do is I'll hold the packages until the end of the giveaway. That way, if you've won more than one thing, I can ship it out in one package. So basically, the earlier that you post and enter into the giveaway, the more times you have a chance to win the different daily giveaways. It's just kind of a way of saying thank you, especially to those of you who watch the podcast episodes when they first release. So the earlier you enter, I guess, better your chances are at especially the earlier giveaways. But again, you can win more than once. So only one post, but your post could be chosen multiple times. So try to make that clear. I will put that all down in writing. So what kinds of things am I giving away? Well, I went through my stash and decided to pick out some things. So this is and it's Kauni. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. So this is some yarn that is not quite a gradient because there is some repetition in there, but it is a dark blue, light blue, and actually kind of an undyed, not quite white, but close to white color. So you can kind of see both sides there. So there's that yarn will be one of them. There's some Julie Spins. I have to give away some Julie Spins because I talk about Julie Spins a lot. This is a merino silk yarn. This is a yarn that is a kit. So this is from CJ Coho, the yarn dyer, and then the kit is for this hat here. So there's enough yarn in there to knit that pattern. I'm not going to show you everything right now. I will list to it in the thread. I will link to all of the stuff on my in my stash, but I wanted to show you a few kind of highlights. I have a couple of skeins of this Spud and Chloe sweater, which is a blend of wool and cotton. I actually made a baby blanket out of this, but I have two skeins that are still in skein form and one skein that's caked. So that will be a giveaway. I have this hemp wool that is from Hemp for Knitting. So it is a wool and hemp blend. So that will be part of the giveaway. I have some alpaca in here. So Regina, I know you in particular will be excited about that. And I have some hand spun. So this is actually, the dyer was Julie Spins, so more Julie Spins. This is some Wensleydale that I spun quite a few years back, but it's in this really pretty colorway, green colorway. And have this whole box full of yarn that I've pulled to do as the giveaways. So I will link to all of the specific yarns in the thread for the giveaway, so that way you can see. I will assign each one to a particular day for the giveaway, and then starting tomorrow, Friday, get the date, May 19th, I will, at some point during the day, do the first drawing for the first giveaway. And like I said, one drawing a day until all 13 have been given away. And then I will start mailing them out to you guys. So I hope this will be fun. I hope I'm excited to read what you guys have to say about, I guess, some of your memories of the podcast or things that you would like me to answer on future episodes. So I hope this is a lot of fun and you guys enjoy sharing those memories and then hopefully winning some of the yarn. So again, I will link to the thread in the show notes, but if you just go to the podcast group on Ravelry, so T-Shirts and Shawls podcast, you do need to be a member of the group to enter. So if you are not already a member of the group, make sure you do that. And otherwise, all the details and the rules and what you need to do will be listed on that thread. So make sure you go there and enter. Again, the last giveaway will be May 31st. So if you're watching this after May 31st, 2017, then you unfortunately have missed the giveaway. But hey, next year on my 2-year podiversary, I am sure I will be doing another big giveaway. Maybe similar to this, maybe something different, but another giveaway for sure. And then there's also, don't forget, the knit along, the quarterly knit along, which ends at the end of June. So you have almost a month and a half. We're right at the halfway point there. To enter that, and there will also be giveaway drawing for that knit along. So lots of giveaways going on. Make sure you go to the podcast group on Ravelry. Thank you so much for watching the podcast. Again, I can't believe that it's been almost a year since I started this thing. So whether or not you have watched from the very beginning or this is your first episode, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor. If you're watching on YouTube, click the thumbs up underneath the video so that way other people can see that you like it. It helps people find the podcast. If you have not already subscribed to the podcast, make sure you do that. And please share the podcast with your friends so that way other people can start watching. And it doesn't matter if you've been watching from the beginning or not, as long as you enter within the time period of the giveaway. New viewers are also eligible for the giveaway, so definitely share it with your friends so they can watch and enter. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you guys again in 2 weeks. Thanks. Happy knitting.